out from that, correct. This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And good morning, Kentucky. Welcome to Kentucky's Voice, your homegrown Christian conservative talk radio show, covering important issues affecting our local community, our state, and our nation. It is Monday, May the 12th. This is Bob Scott coming to you live with the truth you won't hear from the liberal mainstream media. As most of you know, a new pope was elected late last week, and the selection of American Robert Francis Provest, a first, I might add, as far as an American being named to that position. He now assumes the title of Pope Leo XIV to lead the 1.4 billion Catholic Church. Prayers for all of our Catholic friends as they enter a new era of leadership. Folks, today is going to be an exciting and jam-packed show as we will be discussing this and many other important topics pertaining to our state and our nation. If you would like to join in the discussion, you can call or text us at 502-571-0970. Again, that phone number is 502-571-0970. Buckle up, everybody. This is going to be a powerful, very powerful hour of faith, facts, and freedom. Our special guest is no stranger to this program and conservative values in our state. He founded and is currently the executive director of the Commonwealth Policy Center, a conservative policy group based in Frankfort, Kentucky. He was also named by Kentucky Today as one of the 5 most influential lobbyists in Kentucky. And he did release late last year a book that I have. It's called Christianity and Politics. It is available on Amazon, and I highly encourage you to pick one up if you haven't gotten it yet. And most recently, he wrote an article for the esteemed conservative publication, The National Review. Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, my dear friend Richard Nilsson.
Bob Scott, it's great to be on the program with you. I always enjoy it.
Well, it's always an honor to have you on, sir. And you know, Richard, I'd like to begin our discussion today by playing a short clip from One America News in which they talk about the targeting of conservatives and Christian Americans by the Biden administration and previous Democrat administrations in a newly released report from Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Security. Folks, this is a real thing. It's not a conspiracy. The truth is coming out. Daniel, please play clip 1.
You guys just released a bombshell report that really sheds the light on what they were doing behind closed doors.
Absolutely. So if you guys remember 2 or 3 years ago under Joe Biden, the FBI and federal law enforcement, they were going after parents who were complaining at school board meetings about trans policies and things like that. They were going after lawful gun owners, people who were military service members, devout Catholics. They were going after certain sectors of American society. And a lot of people raised alarm bells and said, you know, it seems like they're going after conservatives. It's kind of like, remember the IRS scandal with Loretta Lynch? It's like, you know, there's a common thread here of people who they're going after. And the messaging from the Biden administration at the time was, well, that's not policy. It's just a few bad apples who are going after these people. Well, as it turns out, it was not. Those were not exceptions. That was, in fact, the rule. So DNI Tulsi Gabbard released this unredacted document, and it's pretty damning. Basically, the Biden administration, or Biden's DOJ, directing FBI agents and federal law enforcement to go after what they referred to as concerning non-criminal behavior. So concerning, but non-criminal.
But non-criminal.
Now, let me read you this quote. Okay. Because this is the most dystopian 1984 you-know-what that you have ever heard. For decades, FBI agents have been required to meet stringent requirements for opening criminal and national security investigations. That's what's called a predicate. The predicate for a full investigation required an articulable, factual basis that reasonably indicates a crime or national security threat has or is about to occur. I'm sorry, doesn't that sound like thought crime? Doesn't that sound like something straight out of 1984?
Yeah.
Like we think that they are about to do something.
Yeah, we feel that you show the characteristics.
We feel that this person donates to pro-life causes, or this person donates to the NRA or Gun Owners of America. They also donate to Donald Trump. So therefore, is that a predicate in their eyes?
Yeah.
It certainly seems like it.
Yeah, and so you guys released that report.
Yep.
What has been the feedback from the viewers?
People are absolutely.
Yeah, people are absolutely enraged, Richard, as this news breaks forth. I'm not shocked. I don't think you are either, that this news has come out. But it's encouraging to see, barring a phrase, you shall know the truth and it shall make you free. And it's just good to see. What are your thoughts about this?
What's interesting is that conservatives in the Trump administration, and Donald Trump in particular, are being accused of targeting their political enemies. And I think a lot of that has been taken out of context. But here we see, prior to the Trump administration and Trump being elected, we see this revelation where those on the far left have been investigating and targeting conservatives. Why? For simply having conservative viewpoints or maybe contributing to conservative causes. I remember the story, I think it was in Biden's last year in office, about parents who'd go to school board members and share their concerns about boys in the girls' bathrooms or gender ideology being taught in the classroom. And parents were labeled as possible terrorists, a terroristic threat. Interestingly enough, to bring some Kentucky perspective on this, I had somebody reach out to me recently in Bullitt County, concerned parents there who their son was being exposed to some things, and they expressed some concern. And this whole thing, what we're talking about, parents being labeled as possible threats, they're seeing this firsthand. Right here in Kentucky, in Bullitt County. And Bob, one of the things that we ought to keep in mind is that in our nation, we've got incredible freedom. And at a very basic level, the government should not be monitoring just regular law-abiding citizens. It should not be policing whether you're a conservative or liberal, for that matter. Look, this cuts both ways, regardless of who is in office. We are a free people, and we should not have our government monitoring us, and we shouldn't have it labeling us. And that's where there is real concern. Look, in whether it's the Trump presidency or the Biden presidency or Obama, I think back when Obama was president, he had an IRS director who was targeting conservative groups. Their nonprofit applications were being impeded and hindered, and in some cases weren't being awarded. Why? Because they were nonprofits, and that should not happen in this country. And I think we're seeing this story is further revelation of what happened in the Biden administration. This is, again, why so many conservatives got on board with Trump. They pushed back against it because there were indications that this was indeed happening. And it was fuel for a second Trump presidency, because they didn't want to be targeted by those on the far left. So this again, this report clearly shows that it's been happening, been going on, and there's pushback here.
Yeah, so often we were labeled as, and still are, the fascists, the Nazis, the crazy people, when in fact we're now seeing this going on, and this has been proven factually to be happening.
Bob, if I could jump in, I know we're coming up on a break here, but one thing that's important to push back against that, to the calls of fascism and autocrats, we stand for certain principles, and this principle benefits conservatives and liberals. And the principle is, we are free people, we should not be monitored by our government, and the government should not target people as well. So that's something we can all agree on across the political spectrum and be in favor of.
Yeah, that's what America is best known for, the ability to speak your mind. And what has really made our nation what it is today. It is time to take a break, folks.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
It is my pleasure to welcome you back to Kentucky's Voice with my special guest today, Richard Nilsson, Executive Director of the Commonwealth Policy Center based in Frankfort. And if you'd like to join in our program, you can call or text us at 502-571-0970. Again, that phone number is 502-571-0970. And Richard, we were talking about some of the, I guess I would call it dirty tricks that the previous administration, the Biden administration, was playing on conservatives, Christians, and specifically President Trump. And these are the totalitarian things that should never, ever be happening in America. It should never happen, you know. Yet we are seeing it happen in other parts of the world, Europe in particular. Now, there are countries like Italy and Hungary and Poland that are pushing back against this. But this is a concern, you know, for us and not just here in America, but for the world. And do you have any final thoughts before we move on? I want to get in and discuss the defunding of NPR and public broadcasting. I was wanting to get your take on that. But any final thoughts on what we were just talking about?
Just to reiterate right before the break, Bob, and that's that as Americans, we should be in favor of certain principles that are good for all of us across the political spectrum. And to kind of rephrase the conversation about the Biden administration targeting and labeling conservatives or suspected conservatives, that's never a good thing, regardless of who's in office, regardless of if they're Republican or Democrat. As Americans, and this is what binds us together, that we are a free people. We rally around First Amendment principles, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, these kind of things. And I think as Americans, we can all oppose to heavy-handed government that would target certain people, certain citizens because of their political or religious views. And these are some of the things I think that would be helpful for us to focus on. What are the things that bind us together as Americans that benefit all of us across the political and religious spectrum? At the end of the day, we're neighbors, we're family members, and we all should be for our country flourishing and prospering, for maximum freedom to be extended to every single citizen. And that's why the far left falls short when they say you're all fascists, you're all for autocracy. No, we're not. We are for a healthy, flourishing country that is doing things according to the rule of law, that affords maximum freedom to the citizenry. And these are things that we are in favor of. We're against the heavy-handed tactics of the Biden administration, and we should be if Donald Trump pursues heavy-handed tactics as well. So those are my last thoughts on that, Bob.
You know, Richard, what are your thoughts, moving along here a little bit, on the current state of NPR and its use of public funds? Do you believe it's time to reconsider federal funding of such institutions? And we've seen through the DOGE efforts, in my mind, the criminal amount of money that has been moved towards NGOs in particular, that has been basically a funneling source for a lot of liberal causes. And we find ourselves really, and I will say this, you know, it's bad when you got somebody like Bill Maher, who himself, and he is no conservative, you know, by any stretch of the imagination, speaking out against NPR and saying it's a joke, that they are a middle of the road entity. And he himself said that they're far left, and I think he referred to them being a little bit far left of him, you know, when he makes a statement like that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Catherine Maher, I don't think any relation to Bill Maher, and I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce her last name, but she's the CEO of National Public Radio, and she testified in front of Congress recently and admitted that they dropped the ball last presidential election cycle, in not reporting about Hunter Biden's laptop. Of course, that was national news. It was an important story. Of course, conservative outlets like Fox carried that story. NPR did not. And she admitted, this is what she said to the Congressional Committee, the House Oversight Committee, which is chaired by Kentucky Congressman James Comer.
Yes.
Catherine Maher said this: our current editorial leadership believes that was a mistake, as do I. So she admitted they fell short in covering that story. But by and large, NPR has really they've been accused of being a far left mouthpiece, particularly when it comes to candidates, campaigns, and policy positions. This is what Congressman James Comer, who I interviewed not too long ago here in the CPC office, This is what he said in that House Oversight Committee. People who listen to NPR are totally misinformed. I
Yes.
have a problem with that because
Yes.
you get federal funds. Now, he went on, he had some other harsher statements there, but as it is, NPR is about $535 million in federal funding last year. Now, that money some went to public radio, some went to public PBS, public broadcasting, their TV outlet, and then some filters down to the local level. There's hundreds of local public radio stations as well. But here's the thing, and Congressman Comer has said this publicly, that anytime a news outlet gets involved politically, if they're showing bias for one candidate or one political party over another, then that outlet should not get funding. And that's where the problem is with NPR. Bob, consider this. I'm going to give some more context to this whole conversation of federal funding of National Public Radio. Last year, one of NPR's senior business editors, Yuri Berliner, wrote an essay which was very, very critical of NPR. And he said this. He said, NPR has an absence of viewpoint diversity. It has always had a liberal bent. And then he went on to further say this, but now an open-minded spirit no longer exists within NPR. Berliner resigned right after that. He pointed to I think it was 70 other editors, high-level editors at NPR, who were, to the person, they were all Democrats. But his last point about not having an open-minded spirit at NPR, that was problematic. And that's what Congressman Comer's picked up on. This is what President Donald Trump has picked up on. That's why he issued the executive order saying we're going to defund NPR. Now here's the challenge with that. And I've got a number of other thoughts, but one of the big challenges is that this money is statutorily granted by Congress. It's budgeted money, and it's going to take more than just an executive order to defund NPR. Yeah.
No, yeah, and I agree. And I was just wondering. And again, this is almost a question that we can all answer. But do you think that NPR's contents aligns or conflicts with the values held by many Kentuckians, as far as, folks in our Christian conservative community? I think we all know the answer to that, but I'll let you answer it.
I think at the federal level, National Public Radio and many of their programs, and they've got several different programs with different hosts and different focuses. Many of those are left-leaning. Not all of them, but many of them are. And when it comes to getting into political reporting, that is problematic. If they're simply a mouthpiece for Democratic candidates, that's problematic. And I think Congress is within their rights to review federal funding. By the way, federal funding is a small percentage of NPR's total budget. That $535 million, I think it's in I want to say single digits. Much of their funding comes from grants, philanthropy. Local stations support NPR, so they get funding from other sources as well.
Yeah, and I know we're just about out of time on this segment. For those of you that are just tuning in, you're listening to Kentucky's Voice with my special guest today, Richard Nelson from the Commonwealth Policy Center. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the bottom hour of this break.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice with my special guest today, Richard Nilsson, Executive Director of the Commonwealth Policy Center based in Frankfort. If you would like to join in the discussion, and it's been a good one, you can call or text us at 502-571-0970. Again, that phone number is 502-571-0970. Richard, when we went to break, we were talking about the potential defunding of NPR, public broadcasting. Again, federal funds, comparatively speaking, you mentioned that go into that are I don't want to say minimal because it's millions of dollars, but in the big picture, it's not a ton of money. And I know you wanted to make a point specifically when we came back to talk about how that impacts Kentucky and what your thoughts were about that.
Right there. So if federal funding was cut to NPR, it would affect local stations. And but it's a nominal amount. It's a fairly small revenue source in the big scheme of things. One thing I wanted to distinguish was the federal NPR and their programming and their left-leaning bias with the local affiliates in Kentucky. At the local level, Bob, you have news teams and programs that are a little more fair, I would say, to conservatives, quite a bit more fair in many cases, where they do bring in people from both sides of the spectrum to talk about important issues. Renee Shaw, by the way, is she hosts KET's Kentucky Tonight. She does a good job in bringing people.
She really does. She's fabulous.
Yeah, and she's fair. I've been on there a number of times. I think she's very professional, does a good job, and she's very fair.
And our own Jim Waters has been on there as well. So, yes.
Yeah. So I think it's important to distinguish national NPR from the local affiliates. One more thing I want to add about this. One thing I do like about the public radio programming is that they do try to bring in clear voices. They try to have reasonable conversations, long form journalism. They will have interviews that go 10, 15, 20 minutes, or stories that go longer. And I appreciate it. Now, what I think we can all agree with is that they need to demonstrate better balance. But their mode of reporting, their tone, and how they approach issues, I think that's something that's good for today's media ecology. We want thoughtful, intelligent, well-spoken participants. I think that's helpful.
And that's so important to a free society, to allow that discussion to come in. It just seems like the name calling always enters in. Yeah. If somebody really starts expressing their view, especially if it's somebody from the right, and they try to start pigeonholing you into a position instead of allowing the discussion to happen. And what really angers me the most is when they start doing the threats and actual acts of violence.
Yes. Yeah. There's no place for that in civil society. Look, the way we solve our differences is at the ballot box, not at the end of a gun barrel. I think Mitch McConnell said that. And this is what sets us apart from most other nations in the world, where we have freedom of speech, where we can engage in dialogue and debate issues publicly, and then we can get behind candidates who best represent our values.
Yes.
But we don't do it through violence. We don't do it through threats. We do it through civility and through conversation. And this takes, I would like to see the conservative community leading on this, where it means that we step out and we model what civility looks like. We model what respect looks like, despite what the opposition is saying. We elevate the standards of conduct and discussion. Somebody's got to take the lead. And this is something I encourage the Christian community to do regularly, that we should take the lead because of God's grace in our life. we should be gracious to others. Because God has been good to us, we should be good to others. We should be careful how we treat others, even those who are very much opposed to us. We
Yes.
don't return insult for insult or reviling with reviling. Instead, Jesus says, pray for those who are persecuting you. Bless those who are reviling. We are careful with our opposition. In fact, Jesus says, he says to love your enemies. And that's hard to do in the public arena. It's hard to do in politics, but it's there. And it doesn't just say love your enemies outside of politics, but this means to love all of our enemies, Bob. And that's something I'm still trying to figure out how to do.
Yeah, I think I don't think I know I am as well, my friend. I want to talk a little bit about DEI, and I know you have, and the Commonwealth Policy Center has been actively engaged in that battle, and we've seen some huge victories that have happened legislatively. And what's your thought, about these victories, these initiatives that are really going to hopefully help turn the tide as far as against the DEI initiatives that has been happening in our state for all too long?
Yeah, a lot has happened in the last 5 months regarding DEI at the state level. A bill passed that prohibits DEI policies and offices and funding in higher ed. So at our universities, DEI programs are dead. DEI positions are dead. And this came about from House Bill 4. Jennifer Decker of Shelbyville sponsored this, passed the House and Senate
My
overwhelmingly.
representative, I might add.
Yeah, that's right. Good one. She's doing a great job. So at the state level, DEI is pushed back. At the federal level, Donald Trump, in an executive order, banned DEI across the board in K through 12 public schools and in higher ed. Not everybody's abiding by this, though. Some of the Ivy League schools are pushing against it and saying this infringes on our freedom here. Here in Kentucky, regarding the DEI pushback in K through 12, there's some good news and bad news here, Bob. Here's the good news. Almost every single school district is abiding by this. They've signed this memorandum of understanding. Some have done it grudgingly, but they're still agreeing with it. And out of the 171, I think it's 171 school districts, all but 2 have signed this agreement, and they're following Trump's executive order. The bad news is that Kentucky's 2 largest school districts refuse to abide by the DEI pushback from the Trump administration. And so this would be the Jefferson County Public Schools and Fayette County Public Schools.
Oh, so shocking that it's those two school systems.
Right. Now, one of the things they need to keep in mind is that federal funds are involved. They could face losing federal funds if they don't abide by this. But here's something that's important, that we're a nation under laws. We have a president, and the president has the prerogative to direct policy in these areas. And they don't really have as I understand it, the government the president, I should say, was within his rights to do this executive order. Yep. And it's the duty of the school districts to follow suit. Now we'll see how this unfolds, and we'll see what Fayette and Jefferson County schools do. But right as it is, they're not abiding by the DEI pushbacks.
We only have a couple of minutes to go in this segment, but I want to talk about. I know you all recently wrote an article concerning the Western Kentucky University drag show and public funding associated with that. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, news out of the student newspaper at Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green just last month indicated that they had their 10th annual drag show on campus. And what was particularly concerning about that was that there was this 4-year-old girl in a photo giving money to one of the drag performers. And of course, that raised alarm, not just in Bowling Green, but across the state. And people are asking, why are children exposed to drag shows? And just to be clear, these shows are sexually provocative. sometimes sexually explicit, and there are rules to protect children. You don't allow children into strip clubs, nor should they be allowed into sexually explicit performances on campuses where there's drag. And this is something where Jacob Owen, my assistant, wrote a column that appeared in Kentucky Today, really calling this out. Again, this is a university campus. Public funds are used. They're promoting something that, at the very least, I think, as Kentuckians, we can all agree on the fact that children should not be part of drag shows. They should not be there handing money to the drag performers on stage. And I'm calling on our legislature, and we've talked to legislators before. We worked on behalf of legislation that would keep kids out of drag performances, and that's something we are going to be pushing for next legislative session.
Absolutely, Richard Nelson, and thank you for calling out the legislature on that, because it is a topic that absolutely needs to be taken up. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice with my special guest today, Richard Nelson, Executive Director of the Commonwealth Policy Center. We'll be right back after this break.
Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice with my special guest today. It's our final segment. Hard to believe Richard Nelson it is my guest. These shows always go too fast. Richard is the executive director of the Commonwealth Policy Center based in Frankfurt. And again, if you would like to join in the discussion, you can call or text us at 502-571-0970. And Richard, we have gotten in several texts during the program. Here's one I want to give you. It's real important. I think you'll appreciate this one. Is please repeat the name of Mr. Nelson's book and how to get it.
Yeah, it's called Christianity and Politics, a memoir of spiritual formation and field guide for Christians in the public arena. If you just type in Christianity and Politics and my name, Richard Nelson, and go to Amazon, it will show up there. So it is really, Amazon is probably the best place, but it's on Barnes & Noble as well. There's an audio version, and then there's a digital version. But if you go to Amazon and just type in Christianity and Politics and Richard Nelson, it will show up there. So.
And another text that came in is our values and morals are a reflection of how we vote politically. Pastors, ministers, priests, etc. know this and need to find a way to pass that along to their congregations. And I think that's one of the chapters in your book. You talk about that. How do you respond to that question?
I do. In fact, I appreciate that text. I spoke to a group of pastors and church leaders on Saturday in Frankfurt, and it was about a Christian approach to the public arena, and specifically talking about the tough moral and social issues of the day. And here's the bottom line. If we believe in God's word and that he gives us moral boundaries in life, then we ought to, as Christian leaders, speak to these things, speak to the issues, disciple our congregations to think about the implications of these issues, and then encourage our people in the church to get out and to vote for those candidates that are best aligned with biblical values. And when we do that, it's simply being faithful to God's principles. And it's being faithful to living in a way that leads to flourishing. If we separate our politics from what we learn in the Word, then there's a whole area of life. The political realm is an important realm. It's an influential realm. But we're divorcing that from God's truths and biblical principles. And we cannot afford to do that.
Yeah, and that's so often is happening in our society, Richard. And I applaud you for going out and speaking at churches. I know you're one of the few folks that are not backing away, from having that discussion, and it needs to continue to happen. Here's a comment from the last segment, really, that came in over the text line. Citizens and teachers need to encourage listening to KET when the Kentucky House and Senate are in session. Mm-hmm. The results are clearer than how the local media reports results. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, as far as KET, one of the good things they do is that they have live coverage of every committee meeting when the legislature's in session, and then also floor activity. So you get a chance to watch up close and personal what our legislators are doing, what our government is doing. And then I think what the person that sent that text in was trying to get to is then if you watch what maybe other news outlets are reporting, it may be a different story. Sometimes they get it right, but not all the time. So this is one of the good things that Kentucky Educational Television does is they put their cameras in those committee rooms, and they put their camera on the House and Senate floor, and you can follow what your leaders are doing. And I think that's a great resource for Kentucky.
Yeah. And Richard, the key really is getting involved, and when I say get involved, I'm not saying necessarily, even though you do encourage people to run for various political offices, especially on the local level, because that's really where a lot of impact does happen. Mm-hmm. But really just start tuning in and paying attention, to different discussions. I personally, of course, I listen to Fox News, but I will also tune in other news sources that don't necessarily generate, but just to hear that side and that perspective. CNN's one that I will look at, hold my nose most of the time, and listen to. But it's out there, and again, I think it's important to get a balance.
Absolutely. It's important to get your news from different segments across the spectrum, and then to make your judgment. That's how I do. By the way, CPC does daily commentaries on news and events and politics. I get my news from across the spectrum to better understand a story and to try to dig into really what's going on. So.
And that news and commentary is also, folks, available on our station. So you get a chance, you definitely want to check that out. I know, Richard, we have about 5 minutes to go in the program, and there's lots and lots and lots of things going on, with regard to the United States and Kentucky. Mm-hmm. What, in these last few minutes that we have, several minutes we have, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I want to point those who are tuned in right now to something called Fidelity Month. This is an effort to get Americans all across the country to be faithful to God, our spouses and families, and our country and communities. So let me boil this down to this: being faithful to God, family, and country. And this is something that Robert George, a professor at Princeton University, started 3 years ago. Robert George is an influential Catholic thinker. He's an author, speaker, solid guy. I've had him on the Commonwealth Matters in the past, and he wanted to put together an effort to help build up our communities and to help our families. And this is the alternative to a lot of the messages we're getting from different outlets today, from what Hollywood tells us and what popular radio and culture tells us. But he's saying that this is a positive, it's a grassroots movement that will help heal division and restore unity in our country. And what Robert George says is that this appeals to what's best and most noble in us, through a return to living our lives in fidelity to God, our spouses and families, and our country and communities. Which, my goodness, who could be against this, right?
I was getting ready to say the same thing.
God, family. This is like being against apple pie.
Right.
But look, in all seriousness, though, I know we're going to get pushed back because, first of all, it's in the month of June, and June is designated as Pride Month.
Yeah.
What is not spelled out there is that Pride Month essentially is celebrating what God says is wrong and immoral. But Fidelity Month is celebrating our Creator, who, by the way, is part of our political fabric in this country. We acknowledge God as the author of our rights, the author of our freedoms. So Fidelity Month it's totally appropriate to acknowledge God. To be faithful to our spouses and families. My goodness, Bob, who could be against being faithful to your spouse and your family?
Right.
And then being faithful and have fidelity towards community and country. Our communities are breaking down. Our families are breaking down. And it's related to this first part, the first commitment to God. When we are no longer committed to God and faithful to Him, who at a very basic level, every one of us ought to give God thanks for the life He has given us.
Amen.
To us. For Christians, we ought to be thankful for the new life that we are given in Jesus Christ. He gives us a new way of doing life, frees us from the shackles of our sins. We're put on a new path to do life in a way that honors Him and in a way that leads to flourishing. And it really starts with that fidelity to God, fidelity to our families, and fidelity to our communities as well.
Richard, we have about a minute to go in the show today. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, learn more about the Commonwealth Policy Center, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can find us on the web. We're at commonwealthpolicycenter.org. It's just the name of our group spelled out, Commonwealth Policy